Hi, my name is Charlene Swinton, and welcome to the Vision Show. Today I have Yogesh Nijan. Welcome, Yogesh, to the Charlene Vision Show.
Thank you, Charlene. I'm delighted to be here.
It's nice to have you on. We met approximately about 3 or 4 months ago, and we just had this great aesthetic connection, and we just start being in touch ever since.
Right.
So just tell me a little bit about yourself, Yogesh.
Well, I'm originally from South Africa, and I thought that was important to mention because it's had a pretty big impact on my business idea. South Africa is where I've spent my foundational years.
And you're not just from South Africa, you're from the Johannesburg area of South Africa where Oprah has been doing her stuff and Nelson Mandela. So let's just talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, a lot of famous people.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, when I found that part, because I'm like, yeah, I know she's from South Africa, but when you said Johannesburg, I was like, wow, that's it's the heart.
Right. And you know, the wonderful thing about Johannesburg is it's got such a great history, and we've had so many amazing people, you know, go through there, from Nelson Mandela to Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And that continues, you know, with people like Oprah coming through there and setting up the school there. You know, it's clearly a rich and vibrant place for ideas and new thinking. And you know, I'm a bit biased, but South Africa is a hub of South Africa, and California of South Africa, source of all great ideas.
Exactly, because when I think of South Africa, you know, they see the poverty part, and where people is asking for, you know, the children that's hungry, and I really never knew about the rich part of South Africa. Right.
And I think, you know, South Africa is such a land of contrasts. You know, I think it has one of the highest, you know, level of inequality in the world. You have, you know, people who are very wealthy, and then you have people on the other end of the spectrum. So it has an amazing diaspora of people, and cultures, you know, and languages and all of that. So, you know, it's, I think, it's a very interesting place to be. And I went to college in Johannesburg.
Did you do in college? No, you did?
Right.
So you graduated from?
Right, from Wits University. So I went to college there, but my family is originally from the east coast of South Africa. So I grew up along the coast. I did my business degree on the east coast of South Africa. And then I went on to do my law degree at Wits University, which is awesome, because I think Johannesburg lends itself to so much you know, innovation and so much, you know, so many new ideas.
Right. Now, I know you mentioned before, you know, a little bit about your parents. Your mother was a teacher.
Right.
And that was amazing, the story you told me about your mother and your dad. You know, so let's just let them know that, you know, what background you came from as well, because you mentioned it's all about the background, how you were raised.
Right. And you know, I think that's a pretty big deal, because I think at that time, you know, I grew up during apartheid. I grew up pre-democracy. And so, you know, at that time, there was a lot going on. There was a lot that was negative, difficult.
So like when you were in school, was just only African Americans?
So schools were racially segregated. It was kind of, you know, the U.S. in the 50s.
It's just like something I can't even think of.
Right.
And that's what you experienced.
Right. And that was, you know, still fairly recent. It was in the 90s. So can you imagine, you have racially segregated schools, you know, residential areas, you had, you know, racially segregated universities. So it was a pretty, you know, it was a pretty intense time to grow up in South Africa. But, you know, I think looking back and looking at that experience, you know, there were definitely many positive memories, strong memories for me. It was a difficult time, but my mom was a teacher, and she often tutored after school, free of charge, to kids in the community.
Now that's amazing, you know.
Right.
I can't even think of people free of charge.
Right, and you know, there was a shared understanding in the community and many communities that in order to rise out of that difficult time, we all had to stick together. We had to stick together for, the values that we believed in. We had to believe that someday, this would all end, and someday there would be freedom and democracy in the country. But that took, a mindset of perseverance. That took a mindset of positivity, of never giving up hope, really. And my dad was, also extremely foundational. He owned a construction business, and at the time he started his business, he would provide financial support for people taking out loans from the bank, and he never had an experience with someone not paying him back. So people owned homes, thanks to his generosity and contribution, and so that culture of giving and helping, I feel created very rich childhood.
How many are you?
We have four children in our family. I'm the eldest. And three sisters, or two sisters in total, including three including me, and my brother. And I guess amongst the four of us, we've all gone into careers or professions that involves in some way, shape, or form giving back.
That's what you was brought up as, and that's like a great way of giving back, supporting others, and that's great. Now what is your new thing going on? You have a new product, and it's these Zen shirts. Let's talk a little bit about the shirts.
So I think the business is a lot more than shirts. And it seems like a relatively simple concept, but I think the main point with these shirts is that children are visual, and by wearing these shirts that have these great graphics on them and these great messages, they're spreading the message of great values. So Zen Collection was really founded with an educational or children's educational mission, and it targets mostly young children in an elementary school setting. These shirts have the first collection was based on Africa, so these shirts have animal themes. And
cool.
So the kids love the animals. That was pretty interesting. I was amazed. One mom said that her kid wouldn't take off the shirt for 3 days because he really loved his lions. So, but that's what I wanted. I wanted young children to love the graphics, and I wanted them to talk about the values that are on these T-shirts. So whether it's about courage or kindness or giving, I wanted to create a dialogue amongst parents and their children, and other kids around what this really means. Because I think the more we talk about it, the more values don't become an abstract concept for kids. It becomes really something that they can relate to. And so that was that was a key part of it. Now I started with the T-shirts.
How long did you start at that?
I started really a few months ago over the summer. So it's all relatively new and a pretty big change for me.
And you decided to do the shirts, I know, for the message to give to the kids. About values and courage. And so what decided you to do the shirts for that?
So I think shirts were, for me, I have a young 7-year-old, and I realized through the years that books are great and very interesting, but as they get a little older and as they grow up, they get very attached to their things. And so when you're wearing something, it's a lot easier to talk about it. So I thought, the quickest route to getting people talking is through a visual expression, and hence the T-shirts. I'm in the process of writing a book. I'm very close to getting that printed, or published rather. And so, thank you. But that's tied into the shirt. So if you have a T-shirt with value of courage on it, I want to have a book related to what courage really means, because I've got a lot of feedback, and the feedback is, love the shirts, and the kids are asking a ton of questions. Wouldn't it be just great if you had a book that could tell us more about what it means?
Exactly. So that's how that came up.
That's how, So that's why I'm, connecting, getting the book up and running, because I think for me, this is, this is an educational pursuit. It's about exploring, children's, or bringing out children's creativity. What I've learned through my background, my past, is that a solid academic foundation is really critical and is really valuable. But also that it's got to be about more than that. We've got to take a more holistic perspective, that education isn't just about reading or math or science. It's about, educating a whole person.
Right.
And I think that's where my background in South Africa came in really handy, because when you had an environment of, looking out for one another and showing caring and empathy and
I think that's what makes a person grow.
Right.
It makes the area where you are grow. Everybody's helping each other.
Right.
I think that's very important.
Right.
Now, compared to the South Africa versus when you was in the United States, you can make some comparisons. Would you think that it's between United States and South Africa?
Right. I think that there's so much that you can sometimes take for granted, just because there's such a wealth of opportunity, and the education. I know I'm American now, but people take for granted what we have here. I think a lot of the time, and I'm also on the board of Play Africa Children's Museum. It's a children's museum organization that was set up in South Africa and by a friend who's actually American.
Oh, wow.
And a former journalist.
So how did that come about?
We had the same idea. That's pretty much how it came about. But her family lives in Seattle, and she came back during one of the holidays when her children were very young, and she went to a children's museum and said, "Oh, wouldn't that be amazing if we had one of these in South Africa?" Wow. And so she took that back, and she started setting that up.
Wow.
And she's done an amazing job. She's actually turned the whole idea on its head.
This is in Johannesburg?
This is in Johannesburg, right.
Now, she did it from scratch?
From scratch.
Wow, so she had the building?
Right. It's a total startup. Our building is not up and running yet, but we have a center. And, that hasn't held the organization back. We said, okay, well, fine. We don't have the final building yet. We don't have a flagship facility, but that's not going to stop us. We're going to take the programming to the children. Right. So Play Africa has been going into townships and in neighborhoods where children normally wouldn't have access to these things.
Right.
Can you imagine a child gets exposed to educational play opportunities and careers and ideas that they normally would never get access to in a normal school environment in certain parts of South Africa.
Right.
So it's just it's been an interesting venture that Play Africa has been very inspiring to me. It's made me realize how much we have here.
Right.
But I also think just to get back to your original question around drawing the comparison, I think we have access to a whole lot here. There's great opportunities for education. But I also think that, children now are so much more plugged in. Everything's about technology.
Exactly. I agree with that. Like, you cannot live without the electronics.
Right. And so that makes in a way, touching one another. And I don't mean that as in physically touching, but as in connecting. So connecting with each other, it makes that much more difficult.
Right.
And I think that's why it's even more important to talk about values at a young age, because I can imagine 20 years from now, with world changing so much, people
might be isolated.
Right. And so I think a future where we where we are connected to each other and we are connected to our core values, it spells a much more positive future.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the Children's Museum, when someone was to enter there, what would they be expecting to see?
Right. I think our intention is to set it up exactly or very similarly to how one is set up in the United States.
Okay.
You know, there's several in pretty much every state here. And it's, you know, you get into a children's museum and it's an educational play opportunity. You know, you can go into an exhibit, for example, that has a medical facility set up, and so child would go in there and play doctor, or you'd go into a banking exhibit set up, and a child would go in there and learn how to distribute cash, or
sounds great,
or a supermarket, or whatever it is. So the point is, you get exposure to so many different things, and I think that creativity, that element of creativity, is just so valuable.
Right. So people can basically do what they feel comfortable doing, the creativity.
Right.
Just doing that instead of just being just one particular thing.
Right.
And that's the message you are also giving. Live your life. So I also seen that on your shirt as well.
Right.
To live your life.
Yeah. So it's about living your life, but living your values primarily. And you'll see on the back of each shirt the tagline is "Live your values," and I think the point there is just to remind everyone that it's great to talk about values. It's great to talk about kindness. It's great to talk about giving. But I think what really matters is living those values, right? So I think, I want to get more dialogue going with parents about giving children tangible opportunities to express these values, right? So whether it's you taking your child for a volunteer opportunity to a soup kitchen,
that's so awesome. When I see the parents, even when I'm working as a nonprofit organization where people come and say, you know what, I want my son. This actually lady came from Africa. She has her son. Her son was about 10 years old, and he came in and he was teaching to our babies. He was reading books to our babies, and that and she made him come every weekend, every Saturday. Was his 1 hour thing he had to do, was to read to the babies at my organization, which was good. And so she's teaching to give back, and that was just like amazing.
Right, and isn't that ironic, right? You would think, okay, surely they, I guess there's an assumption, everyone assumes, and I've certainly been on the receiving end of that when I came here, where people go, oh, you came from Africa, that must be so bad. You see, and I think the point is that, when you ask to draw the parallels, I think one of the things that I'd probably say is the part that really stands out to me is that through the difficulty that, and through the poverty that you see and the hardships that you see in Africa, people around you, it builds a mentality of giving back. You see it, so you feel it, and that you've got to do something. And I look at how my daughter's growing up versus how I grew up. In many ways, I'm very thankful. She has access to a great education and goes to a great school.
Too.
And I did too. And but I think I'd love to give her more exposure to truly, this was also inspired by her. I'd love to see her.
Have your daughter gone to Africa?
Yes, we go very often. We're going again in December of this year. So we try and go as often as we can. And
your parents are still down there, right?
Yeah, my mom's still there. My dad's late. And she loves spending time with grandma, and she's
just know that culture.
And we go to game reserves, and we go to spend time with grandma and all that good stuff. So it's quite interesting. And when she gets there, she's unplugged. It's literally unplugged. No technology. I mean, you have access to it, but
because you have access.
Right. I mean, you have. I think the whole world is just so well connected right now. But
because I did read that certain places in Africa, other places don't have like the internet connection.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some patchy areas that you would find no connectivity, but I think you'd be surprised by how well connected the continent is. You know, if you look at places like Nigeria and Kenya, a lot of typical business services, like applying for a loan for example, is done on your cell phone. So, you know, it's been, I think it's been a source of innovation for many entrepreneurs to say, okay, how do we work with this, right? We have, you know, maybe limited connectivity, bandwidth, or internet connectivity in certain parts of the country. We have people who have use cell phones. How can we use social media? How can we use technology that's accessible to people to get services out to people and to get, you know, messages across? So I think it's, you know, it certainly isn't. You know, there's a lot of what we see on the news that is certainly true. There's certainly a lot of, you know, suffering, but I think what I'd also want to emphasize is that Africa has many positive stories to tell. There's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of great stories, a lot of great people that came out of there. I know that, and I'm like, wow, because everyone get that, because the media has a big impact on everyone's life, and everybody, oh my goodness, you know, first I was like, I wouldn't go to Africa when I was younger, because that's I was getting like, oh my goodness, but now I feel like I would love to go to Africa, you know, and especially like you said, the people's all warm and receiving, so that's basically good as well. Yeah. And, you know, I don't know if you've heard, I'm sure you've heard of Trevor Noah. Yeah, I actually did. When you told me about him, so I looked him up, and that's just like amazing. Yeah, so he has that, you know, he has that background, you know, he's from Johannesburg. He's, you know, had a pretty difficult childhood, but, you know, he's just kept going, and he kept persevering, and there's something to be said about, you know, adversity and perseverance, and just, you know, just like I look up to him, I'm like, wow, you know, and I started seeing him on TV, and you know, his stories, like, wow, it's just amazing, and it gives you the courage to try to do that as well. You know, like saying, if he can do it, my goodness. You know, with me with all these opportunities, I can do it as well. Absolutely. I mean, we've had several amazing South Africans, you know, that, you know, some more popular than others, but, you know, Elon Musk is doing great things with space travel. You've got Trevor Noah, who's doing great stuff for comedy, and then there's Charlize Theron as well, who's, you know, in Hollywood, and then we have awesome you. Actress. I hope so. I hope that. So yeah, we have you as well. So you know, what is your next step with the Zen collection? You know, I really do think that this is going to go big. You do this full time? Right now, it's one of the things I do. I've got my fingers in many pots, but you know, I've had a corporate career for many years, and in banking and in corporate, and so now it's I guess it's come to a time that's I really want to give back. So this is one of the avenues. So let's just show some of your shirts. Sure. Yeah. Sure. So you could just show your shirt to the camera. So this T-shirt is about it's got a picture of a giraffe, and it's called it's Dignity, and this one was based on African refugees, and the theme of dignity there is just really to highlight that despite what they go through, they come back with their dignity intact. And often go on to give back. And you can see the back of the shirt says "Live your values." Live your values. And that's, you know, that's meant to be a reminder to the kids that, you know, whatever's on the front of it, just don't forget. It's all about living your values. So if someone in front of you can read and someone's behind you, they can read the back part, which is good. I like that. And this one's about courage, and I love it. It's an awesome shirt for a little girl. You know, it's a lion, and then you've got your live the values in the back. This looks pretty good. You know, this is something that looks like you can iron. It doesn't get smashed on the material. Yeah, it's really good quality. I use a local supplier here in Hartford. So giving back to the local community. Now, who comes up with these designs? So that's part of what I do. I come up with the thought process around the designs, but I don't actually design it myself. I've got people who do the designing for me, but the concept behind it is what I come up with. So, for example, the value of courage, and basing the theme on Africa. You know, a lion represents courage. for me, the giraffe dignity, and there's another one I have, a chameleon, and the value of change, because chameleons change color all the time, and so for children, that value of adaptability and being able to adapt and adjust with change is such a valuable, I think, value for them to understand in their lives.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And I know you have a bag here as well.
Yes. So this is the tote bag.
Which is oh yeah, I love this one because I just learned something to hope.
Right. This one is in hope, and it's pretty cool. So this is the hope. This is a protea flower, by the way.
Right. And it actually means hope.
Right. Right.
I learned that today.
Yeah, the protea flower is indigenous to South Africa, and it means hope. So, so there's a lot of research and a lot of thought process that goes behind
I think
these
that makes sense.
designs.
That's why I think it's going to blossom due to the fact you actually analyzed everything, and everything is basically. It's history like this right here. This is all African.
Right.
Like I had no idea about the flower.
Right.
So it does mean hope, and that's good. So there's some type of connection. It's not just wearing a shirt.
Right.
It's wearing something that's meaningful.
Right.
It's meaningful, and it makes people feel good. Somebody's walking around with a tiger on his shirt, like maybe running. I can do this. It's giving them that courage. It's giving them that. So I love the theme that you're doing, and you say the next. I know you have the book out. I know this is going to get really big.
I hope so. That's the hope.
It has started because tell us, you have a lot of sales,
right?
And you.
Yeah, I think sales like with any new startup is a work in progress. But I've had some, wins that I'm very proud of. Right. Mostly amongst schools, educational institutions that were really taken that were very supportive. Some of the one of the better known schooling brands was, is really all about values, and they loved it, and
that's your target audience. Does the values, you go after them. Now, if somebody wanted to get in contact with you to buy this shirt, so just to maybe have more conversation, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so they can go onto our website, which is www.zenliveyourvalues.com. I had to put in the Live Your Values piece because that's a key part of the Zen collection.
And that makes sense. I like that.
Right.
Yep. And to just say, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it. And hopefully you're going to definitely be doing great things.
Thank you.
I mean, you just started, and it's like, wow. So imagine a year from now. Yeah. So I think that's definitely going to just go worldwide, from country to country, and I know that's your goal.
Thank you. Yeah, eventually
it'd be good to just go to different countries, in Africa, in United States, all over the world.
Right.
So that would be great for that to happen.
Yep.
So anything else that's going to be going on? That's basically just you focusing on the shirts. You have the bag, and any other products going to be coming out?
Yeah. So. That's a work in progress. I want to start small and get, I want to focus. The focus really is to get the message out. And I'm sure there'll be more to come. But for me, it's more important to get the message out. If I can get kids talking about values and living it every day, then I've achieved a lot, and that's important to me.
I think that's good. And I think another thing you probably should do is go to the schools.
Right.
Visit the schools and just do that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I just want to say thanks for coming out.
Right.
It's been great having you, and I hope you get more sales.
Thank you.
Basically, and it's coming because you're sending a positive message.
Right.
So you have it. It's there, and it's basically going to be going out to message. Like I said, go to schools and basically talk about values, because I think values is very important. Right. And that's, I think, the concept we're missing in the United States is the values. Everyone is just has missed that concept. There's some that does it, but I think the percentage could be larger.
Yeah. So I have certainly seen a number of great, awesome people who are really strong on values here and elsewhere in the world, and those are the people I want to talk to.
But thanks a lot for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, and if you want any information, you could just contact Charlene's Vision or Jogis as well. Have a great night.